Hello. Last time I rambled about something that a little bit of a downer, a little unfortunate, but this time I want to talk about something I actually enjoyed. So a bit ago, more than like a third of my life ago, I read Romeo and Juliet because I study English in school, in high school, obviously. Like I don't study English in like university or anything, but in high school as American little boy that I was, still am, regardless, I had to read Shakespeare. The first one I remember reading was Romeo and Juliet, which, very famous work. Classic, even. But I remember not enjoying it for various reasons I want to get into. But now, I read it again. I actually finished it last night, as of the making of this video. And I have some thoughts. So, spoilers. I mean, to be fair, this it's a classic. Everyone knows this. So if you clicked on this video, you either know the entire story more or less, or you don't give a shit. To each their own. I just want to give you the warning. If you wish to continue, that's on you. Anyway, so I will be going through, I think, most of the story bit by bit from memory. Of course, 'cause everything I do is from memory when with the series, quote unquote series. So let's start with the start of the book, the start of the play, rather. The play starts with the story, the plot, and the ending of Romeo and Juliet being sung by a choir, I think, something like that. And everyone knows it basically. It's like, damn, tough, they died. It is what it is. They love each other. They're born from two different families that hate each other. They die, and then they make up at the end. The two families, rather. So that's cool, but that's like that's at most a page, depending on the size of the book, of course. But wherever you're reading it, if it's a script, I don't know. I'm not into. I've never been into plays like that. No, I don't mind plays. I just never acted. Don't think. Not. Yeah, whatever. So the real part that's really interesting is what comes after, aka the story itself. What happens in this story? It starts with two Capulets talking to each other. This what are they talking about? They're talking about the opposition, the Montagues, and I definitely favor the Montagues. I don't want to like rep my set or whatever, but that's just me. And they were talking like, "Yo, man, if if I see a Montague right now, shit's about to go down. I'm gonna cause some movement." But then he's like, "Oh, well, what if the Montague is a woman?" And then the dude's like, "I'm gonna push her against the wall." See, that's where it kind of got me in the beginning because I forgot how raunchy this play is, this story is. It's also very funny. It got a little chuckle out of me. I didn't expect it. It caught me off guard. But whatever. And this is a theme that it continues after, mostly for the first like 2/3 maybe half to 2/3. After that, it's a little depressing, but it's the nature of the tragedy. But and then they ended up seeing some Montagues. The Capulets bit their thumb at the Montague, which is like basically flipping someone off back then in Shakespearean times, or even probably before then. They start brawling, and then there comes two people. The first is the good little boy, Benvolio. Benvolio is like, "He's eating," which, I'm a peace lover myself. I mock him, but I agree. It, the rivalry is for nothing. It's like, we shouldn't fight, right? Because peace and love and shit. But there comes the worst character in the fucking book, bro. I might sound a little vitriolic, but if I wouldn't be friends with Tybalt. I'll just keep it at that. I wouldn't be friends with Tybalt. Tybalt pulls up and he's like, "Look at me, I'm good at sword," and everyone's like, "Yo, bro, this guy's really good with sword." It's like, ah, shit. So Everyone starts fighting. Just a bunch of Capulets, Montagues. It's like a gang battle. But then, a little after, pulls up the the elder family heads of the Capulets and the Montagues. I don't think they have names. I think they're just like old man. I think they just call them Capulet, Montague, Lady Capulet, Lady Montague, something like that. I don't remember. I literally read it like a bit ago, but I don't remember. Uh, and they're like, "Yo, I want to get in this," and then the ladies are like, "Ah, you guys, you're too old for this shit," which is pretty funny. Haha. Good start. Good start. Very entertaining. But then the prince shows up. The prince like, "Oh shit, the prince! Everyone stop!" He's like, "Okay, y'all need to stop fighting for real. Like, you guys are starting. You guys are just belligerently fighting in these streets, and you're disturbing the peace, which is fair. It was, you know, if a fight just started out of nowhere where people had like swords, then I don't know, man. I don't. It doesn't sound like a good neighborhood to be in. Which I mean, Verona, Italy seems kind of nice, but I don't know if people are just pulling out swords all the time. Not for me. Not for me. With all due respect. And then that's nice. That's more or less how the first act ends. First scene ends. After we see Romeo, one of the better characters in the series. Romeo was like, "Oh my god, I'm so emo. I'm so emotional right now. I'm going up. My heart is broken. My heart is broken." And it's like, but why? Intrigue. And then comes probably best boy, Mercutio. Oh my god. Mercutio, I remember being pretty funny, but Mercutio is like really funny, man. It's dude, Mercutio's best boy. In my humble opinion, of course. You can argue Romeo. Romeo's pretty cool. Benvolio's cool. Friar Lawrence is up there as well. But Mercutio is just so entertaining. He's always funny, right? So he's like, yo, actually, I skipped some shit. Montague was telling, the older Montague was telling Benvolio about how Romeo has been emo. And then he pulls up, actually, Romeo pulls up, Benvolio talks to him about it, and then they're like, okay, tough. And then comes the next scene where I'm just getting ahead of myself. Mercutio. I just want to talk about Mercutio, okay? Mercutio is really funny. So Mercutio is just teases him lightly, a little friendly teasing because they're homies. And I'm probably not doing the story justice. I'm realizing this, but off the dome, it is what it is. The Mercutio is just talking about like, man, why, dude? Why are you so sad? Just there's so many fish in the sea. And then Romeo's like, but there's only one fish for me. And, all right. And this fish that caught his eye is a nun. And obviously, pretty hard to pretty hard to romanticize and wife up a nun, because the nun is devoted to God, the Abrahamic God, under the Christian faith. Right? So it's like, man, gotta get over this shit, man. So eventually, yada yada yada. Mercutio does his thing, which is entertaining. Does as a little passage of just joy, and then next scene. I'm keeping a lot. Whatever. Next scene. Lady Juliet, best girl, mind you. Also, canonically speaking, you you learn here that she's about to turn 15, and Romeo is probably not much older than that. So, which different times given the era, but it's not for me. So, for my own sake of peace, throughout the story, I just scaled their age a bit. I just went from like Juliet's like 15 canonically in my head canon. She's probably closer to I'm like 20, 22, and Romeo's not that far, like just a little bit above that. Maybe like if she's 20, she's Romeo's probably like 22, 23, something like that. Just for my own peace. I think it's better this way in my heart of hearts. Oh, but the next scene, everyone's getting dolled up and stuff because they're getting a little party. Uh, a masquerade ball, if you will, because that's literally what it is. And this is another moment, probably my best laugh, right? A big sign of why it's funny. My favorite joke in the whole series, the whole book, the whole play is the late the nurse, the head nurse or whatever, the one that took care of Juliet her entire life, more or less, said was recounting a story of how when Juliet was younger, she was playing with the head nurse's husband, and she fell forward. She got a little bump on her head, and then the husband's like, Juliet, that's you can't do that. When you're of age, you gotta fall backwards. If you don't get that, use your imagination. If you use your imagination, you don't get it, you're probably too young for this video. Anyway, I thought it was really funny. Got actually a pretty good laugh out of me, and I told some friends about it. It's pretty humorous, right? But then they're like, okay, real talk though, you kind of need to get a husband because you're coming of age. And Juliet's like, no, thank you. I don't want one yet. And then that's it. And then Juliet's like, maybe, maybe, after a little bit of convincing. Not much. It's more like, do it because I'm your mother, because the mother was talking to her. Then the old man Capulet might have also partook in the. Oh man, recounting the story from memory is pretty rough. I'm not gonna front, but however, it doesn't matter. I'm not one for excuses. Old Capulet is like, okay, you gotta get married. Tough. It is what it is. It's just a part of life. Back then. Now we will make this ball. Now invite everyone that's worth a damn in Verona. It's like, okay. So they sent some courier, more or less. Some dude. I don't know if he was actually a courier. He's just some guy under the Capulets because they're very rich. And they're like, okay. Oh, excuse me. I can't read. Young gentlemen who happen to be Benvolio, Mercutio, Romeo, are you guys able to read? Can't. And then somebody, I don't remember who, it's like, yeah, we can read. I think it's Romeo. Romeo's like, yeah, I can read. Let me read that. It's like, oh, it's an invitation for Rarius for a thing. And you gotta, and then the list the names of the people that are supposed to show up. So now they're aware. The dude leaves. The courier leaves. I'm just gonna call him the courier because I don't remember what his role is. And then they're like, "Oh man, we should totally crash this for fun, just to get your mind off of the I forgot her name, the nun." It's like, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. So skip to that. They're having fun. They're just having a grand old time. Well, at first, Romeo was being still emo about it because, like, oh, the nun. I can't. She was the only one for me. But then, he sees Juliet masked, by the way, a masked Juliet. And you're like, oh my god, who is this woman? I must dance with her. I must talk to her. And I joke, but there's a reason why this play is a classic over many, 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 many years. The first scene between Romeo and Juliet is a delight. If you're interested in like witty back and forth, it's such as say the relationship between Holo and Kraft Lawrence from Spice Wolf. That's the only one that comes to mind right now, but I'm sure there's others. It's it's a delight. It doesn't last as long as I'd like, given because the plot has to move. But it's just a back and forth of Riz, bro. As the kids say, Riz, right? It's oozing charisma. The back and forth is you gotta just read it, man. You gotta just read it. If you know, you know, right? And one notably, they dance, they talk, they kiss. That's a gross s- over summary of the interaction between the two. Like, and then after Romeo leaves, they ask, both of them ask eventually, like, "Oh my God, who is that man slash woman?" Depending on which side you're hearing it from, right? And they're like, "Oh my God, it's my enemies. They are my enemy. But how are you so hot?" But like, okay, so that's like the start of the whoa big conflict. Like hot woman, hot man. I, I love you, which admittedly is pretty interesting, especially for what is it like the 1600s, something like that. It's neat. It's got some pull. And then they spend some time they outside, and they're like, "Oh my God, where'd Romeo go? We don't know." Benvolio and Mercutio. Benvolio and Mercutio are like, "Oh my God, where'd Romeo go?" And then they try to like entice him, right? They're like, "Is Mercutio doing his thing?" He has a big passage listing off the good points of the nun, his old love, and they're like, "Oh my God, her beautiful eyes, her quivering legs." I'm like, "What? What do you mean by that?" And I thought it was pretty funny, right? Because if you don't get it, then shit, you're probably too young for this video. But it was very adorable. But then they leave because I don't know. I mean, they're like they can't find him. I'm sure shortly he went home, maybe or something. So they leave, and Romeo was like, "Haha, I was here the entire time," which we knew because Romeo did talk first. But whatever. Don't. This isn't a legit recap of the story, obviously. And then Romeo was like, "Ah, I need her, Juliet, my Juliet. I can't think of anyone that's hotter than Juliet." Which, if you noticed, probably like 5 minutes ago, I talked about him pining over the nun. Well, it's what it means to be young, I guess. In some ways, some people are like that till they're dead and old and decrepit. But to each their own. And then, off in the not distance, but like slightly distant, Juliet's like, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?" Which, if you didn't know, it's not saying "Where are you?" It's Juliet saying, "Why is your name Romeo? Why are you Romeo?" And then here comes the best scene, right? Everyone knows this fucking scene. It's actually my favorite part of the whole book, the whole play. I would say that it warrants its classic status. It's gorgeous, truly. I think this is there's two moments in this play, this story that really moved me. And when Juliet was talking with Romeo, the back and forth between Romeo and Juliet was, wow, exquisite, fantastic. And that was the best parts of this series, this book play. I'm so used to saying series because of talking like manga or whatever. But the best part of this play, the story, is the dynamic between Romeo and Juliet, which I both movement though both times where I was moved by the language was because of Romeo and Juliet. Either and they're together. Asterisk, kinda. You'll see why, but it's gorgeous, man. It really does. In my humble opinion, it really does deserve its classic status. It really moved, dude. I felt like a nerd when I'm like, oh my god, it's so pretty. I felt like when I was moved by the language, I instantly thought of like, wow, I really got moved by poetry. Am I that kind of person now? Like, I mean, to be fair, I always got moved by art, right? But it's a little different when you're, I don't know, when it's poetry. When you're used to like poo poo pee pee poetry, and you're actually reading something pretty. It has a stigma to it. But I digress. They talk. They're like, "I love you." They profess their loves to each other more or less. And in like the most eloquent way possible. Probably these are not. This is not how their 15-year-olds speak. It's just not. But again, when you scale it up, it's a lot better. I oh, I love you, but like I don't trust you. Juliet is a girl boss, by the way. Juliet is for a 15-year-old canonically, dude. She's kind of a queen. This is the most queen-like 15-year-old. What do you mean by that? Anyway, right? So Juliet's like, I don't trust your words. You can say anything pretty you want, but I need some concrete shit. And then they're like, they talk or whatever. Then Romeo was like, let's get married, as as one does. So Juliet's like, okay. Not actually. There's a little bit of intrigue, but there's a little bit of back and forth, and she's like, okay, but not really. It's more like I'll deliver my message later. So they leave, scene ends, and some shit happens. I don't remember this part. It's a little loose at this point because I actually just still enjoyed it, but how can you follow the balcony scene, right? It's crazy. It's pretty. Something they get each other. Oh right. The Juliet is like, "Yo, I love this Romeo kid." Oh, Romeo, you're so hot. Nurse, you don't understand. He's so hot. So, and this is Romeo does the same thing with Friar Lawrence. Comes in Friar Lawrence. Like, who's Friar Lawrence? He's kind of like the goat. Not really. My favorite character is Juliet, but Friar Lawrence is the person that spoilers marries them. Also he's also the one that comes up with the plan later. But again, we'll get to that. So Friar Lawrence is just some Catholic dude. I assume Catholic because it's Italy, but I don't know. And 1600s. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm just, anyway, getting lost in my own train of thought. But they they talk to their respective helpers, Juliet with the nurse and Romeo with Friar Lawrence. Like, okay, I'll officiate your wedding. So then they talk, they go back and forth. They send the nurse sends Juliet sends the nurse to talk to Friar Lawrence and Romeo, and uh, and Romeo's like, please speak well for me, and she's like, "Oh." I'm like, please, and then she's like, okay. So that happens. They get married. This is where shit actually gets down. Like I'm grossly oversimplifying everything. Obviously, this is I don't need to have to say that, but in the case you didn't know, now you know. Again. So after they officiate the wedding, they're technically married. Soon after, like 3 hours later, actually, after they got married, Tybalt's starting some shit. Oh, I forgot to talk about Tybalt in the fucking ball. Okay, real quick. Another reason why I don't like Tybalt, besides the fact that he's just a belligerent asshole. Tybalt in the was like Tybalt saw Romeo dancing with Juliet, but he didn't. I don't. He's like, I smell a Montague, and then he's like, okay, I must kill this Montague for disgracing this masquerade ball. And then old Capulet was like, dude, what are you doing? Don't do that. You will not disgrace this ball any further. He just let him be. He's touted as a really good man. And then Tybalt's like, I must refuse. It's a part of me to be a belligerent piece of shit. And old Capulet, this is probably the realest moment that he's ever done in the book. in the series, in the what the fuck, in the play, the story. He's like, boy, you're fucking dumb, more or less. He actually calls him a saucy boy, but it doesn't really carry over nowadays. So calls him a saucy boy, aka rebellious. I am your superior. If you do not listen to me, then there will be consequences to your actions. And then Tybalt's like, fine, all right. Fast forward to where I was supposed from where I am now, where we talk about Tybalt. He smells Montague blood again. However, he didn't see Montague blood. Well, he does. He does. He does. He sees Benvolio and he sees Mercutio. And Mercutio's Romeo's friend. So Mercutio's like, hey man, fuck me instead. Romeo's not here, but I'll take you on. Right? This is again 3 hours after they got married. Like, ah, shit. Real Mercutio, once again, being a real one. I'm not one for violence, but, you know, some shit just gotta happen sometimes. So, they fight, and Mercutio's holding his own, and Romeo pulls up. It's like, and he gets in between them. Very poor decision, because they're fighting with swords, because every fight in this story is with swords. And then as he's like trying to get as he is between the two, Tybalt stabs under Romeo's armpit, basically under his arms, and kills Mercutio. I'm like, "Ah, best boy, no, don't do this. And then, right, he fucking flees. Tybalt fucking leaves. Why? I actually have no fucking clue why he left, but whatever. Probably for like plot reasons. So Mercutio and Romeo are just talking, like, oh, Mercutio, you're gonna be okay. He's like, no, Romeo, I feel it. My life is fading. I mean, he didn't say this. I'm just making shit up, obviously. But it's like, oh, oh, it hurts. Oh, it hurts so bad. And then he dies. And Rome is like, grr, I'm so angry. I must avenge my friend. Real as fuck, though. I mean, in its own way, right? So then Tybalt pulls up again, which I don't know why. Again, I don't know why he left in the first place. But they fight. Tybalt dies. Thank God. Round of a fucking applause. Tybalt fucking blows, bro. I didn't. I didn't. I could rant for a good amount of time about Tybalt, and he only has like 3 scenes. Uh, like what? The very beginning against with Benvolio in the Masquerade. In this, yeah, he has like 3 scenes. Unless I'm missing some shit, which I probably am. But 3 scenes, and this guy is a bitch. All 3 scenes. What's this? Why can't you just be happy? The what? Anyway, right? Tybalt fucking dies, and then Romeo fucking leaves because again, the prince was like, "No fighting. Shit happens if you fighting," and then they fighting. So you know, gotta leave. Prince pulls up because he hears about the disturbance, and he's like, "What manner of bullshittery is this? What happened here? Call for the Capulets!" And then the Capulets pull up and like, oh my god, my Tybalt. Oh my god, my kinsman. Who doth theirs? And then I remember who, but somebody tells them the entire story is like, oh yeah, Tybalt kills Mercutio. And then Romeo kills Tybalt. And they're like, oh. And then the Capulet is saying, Prince, I must beseech thee. You must have him dead. He killed my kinsman. I don't know if it's Lady Capulet that said this, or older, or the dude, or both. But then the prince is like, well, Tybalt was kind of a bitch, and he kind of started it. So it's kind of just if you think about it, because he killed Mercutio first, and Romeo's just defending his friend. Which,
Huh.
Prince like is also he's kind of like a femboy, you know. He's kind of soft. Whole family's soft, as you'll see with the character later, which I was supposed to mention, but whatever. But this is real. So he doesn't he doesn't say anything. He's like he doesn't want Romeo dead because it was kind of fair. It's Tybalt's fault, as is most of this book. Real talk. But he demands Romeo's exile, his banishment from Verona into Mantua. I don't know if it was specifically to Mantua, but he eventually goes to Mantua. It's like, oh no. And then it's just so sad. Then Julia hears this news and like, oh no. And she's crying. Everyone thinks she's crying because of Tybalt's death. But normally you think like young love or whatever. But no, no, no. Juliet's crying for Romeo. Why? Because Tybalt fucking blows. Even the cousin knows. Like, dude, Tybalt he's asking for trouble. He just goes around picking fights. So he's like, oh, who cares about Tybalt's death? Romeo was banished. It's akin it's akin to him being dead. Woe is me. And like, okay, sure. I mean, real though, kinda. If I were Juliet, I'd rather give a shit about the Romeo than Tybalt. That's just me though. Anyway, some shit happens. They get banished. Some time goes on, and then old Capulet pulls up. Eventually, again, I'm skipping some time here. Old Capulet's like, "You will marry the mother femboy named Paris, who is was actually mentioned right before the ball during the joke with the nurse and falling backwards, right? Like, ah, you must marry Paris. He's I think a courtsman. I I think related to the prince in some way. He's certainly rich, right? And Paris pines for you, Juliet. You must marry. And Juliet's like, "Hmm?" And then Capulet flips shit. He's very angry. He's like, what do you mean, no? You are my daughter. My daughter is unruly. You will be wed to him, or you are no longer a part of this family, more or less. And then she's like, no. All right, but there's this really wise man named Friar Lawrence. She's like, so Juliet seeks his help. She was like, oh my god, Friar, please don't wed me to this man. Paris sucks. He's a femboy. Which is like, and obviously, given that he's a priest or a friar is close enough. For all intents and purposes for the story, this recap, they're basically the same thing. Obviously, they're not, but I'm just being ignorant. Friar Lawrence like, I actually like femboys, but you know, I'll help you out. As in, you must marry him. And Juliet's like, I will not marry this man. I'd rather kill myself. Real talk. Actually, that's like more or less what she said. But Friar is like, I can't have that. I can't have people be killing themselves in my humble abode, the church. So he concocts his plan, which, as you heard from the chorus when I first played, doesn't work out. However, he concocts his plan, which is like, I will give you this potion that makes you sleepy, very sleepy, akin to death. And I will call for Romeo to come to your side. Once you wake, you and Romeo will go away. Basically, in summary, she fakes her death so she doesn't have to go like break. I actually have no clue why she has to fake her death. Why not just leave for Romeo? But something maybe family reasons, and maybe one day they might see each other or something. Whatever. So fake your death. Romeo pulls up. You wake up from your sleep. and then you guys go off. Okay, and you guys live happily ever after. Sure. However, there's there's a problem. There's a big issue. One, Paris sucks. Not as much as Tybalt. Actually, Paris isn't even like he's a wrong place, wrong time type of dude. Cause the chemistry between Paris and Juliet is practically non-existent. Like he tries, it's just you came too late, my guy. It unfortunately you're not Romeo. Romeo and Juliet has the best chemistry in the series. Easy, no debate. You could try debating Mercutio and Romeo. I would disagree. I love Mercutio. I like Romeo. No, Juliet and Romeo for sure. So how can if you can't even keep up to Romeo and Juliet, right? You can't keep up to Romeo and Mercutio. You can't. You're not. You're not gonna do much. I'm sorry. Your whole point is actually just to die. So Friar Lawrence writes a letter to Romeo telling him of the plan. However, he gets a different letter first. Romeo gets a different letter first. He gets a letter saying Juliet has passed, and he's like, what? How is life even worse than this? So he decides it'd be very wise to buy a potion with the very large sum of money that he has, and he gives it. You know, he buys it, and he says it's not that bad because money can fix your problems. You know, money can fix your problems. He says this because the apothecary. I don't know if you call him that. Yeah, the potion, the poison seller. It's like, dude, I can make it, but one, it's very illegal to make poisons, and two, I I can't. My morals say no. Roman's like, but you look ill. You look like you're starving. You look like you can't support yourself. Here's some fucking money. But money's the problem to everything. Your poison is just a cog in the machine. He more or less acquiesces. And then he pulls up in due time to the grave of Juliet, or the alleged grave of Juliet. Then, before that, right, Paris is there. Paris is like, my wife. It's actually kind of nice. This is actually kind of a nice gesture. He cries about his wife, his wife to be, and he spreads some flowers after telling his guy. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I forgot his page. Yeah, Page. His name. His name is not Page. Is the pager of Paris. The page is like, I gotta leave. As in, Paris told me to leave. He throws some flowers and shit right around. But then the goat, not the actual goat, but one of the better characters in the series, a better character than Paris, that's for damn sure. Romeo pulls up and he's like, oh, his equivalent to Page, I forgot his name, but he's like, if you disturb me with my wife, I will kill you. And then the dude's like, all right, I'll leave. So then he goes to the tomb. Paris heard Paris heard some shit, but then he heard Romeo pull up. He hid just to see who it is, right? Because no one's supposed to see Paris doing the thing he is doing, because it's a little interesting, a little interesting behavior. So Romeo's like, ah, my wife, life is hard. But then Paris is like, oh my god, it's Romeo. He should be exiled. I must do what's just and slay him. So he pulls up out of the bush, like with his little dinky ass sword. This isn't canonical, I'm just making shit up. And right, and he's like, On guard, Romeo. And Romeo's like, dude, I killed Tybalt. I could kill you. I don't want to kill anybody though. I just want to be at peace with my wife. And then he's like, no, Paris, I am. You, Romeo, are dead by my hand. And obviously, he fucking kills the femboy because, duh. What? Like, what else would happen, right? He dies. Paris is like, please put me next to my wife. He's like, Romeo being the good guy he is. You know what? I'm no cuck, but if it's your last words on this in this vessel of yours, I will do such a thing. He puts him next to Juliet. And now he does this creepy shit with Juliet, where not really creepy. It's supposed to be romantic, but he like kisses her, and he's like, with this final kiss, I die." And then she drinks the potion, and he's like, "Oh, what good potion this is! I'm dying really fast." And then he dies. Juliet wakes up, and he's like, "What? What's happening?" Friar Lawrence pulls up, and he's like, "Because again, this is supposed to be the time where Juliet wakes." As he drawn it up. However, Romeo's fucking dead. He's like, "Oh my god, I hear things. Juliet, we gotta leave. We gotta go. I hear things. This is very illegal what we're doing." And he leaves. But Juliet, being the real one she is, it's like, "Oh my god, my husband, you're dead." And the interaction between Romeo and Juliet, even when is this one was beautiful as well. I the tragedy does hit because at first the Romeos were it was very pretty, right? I noticed it was very enjoyable, very pretty while he was talking to Juliet. But then Juliet, of course, has the best lines in the damn story. Juliet's like, "Oh my god, there's no more poison. You drink it all, but there must be some on your lips." She kisses him, and you're like, "Huh, your lips are warm." Actual quote. But she didn't get enough, right? She didn't get enough poison. In fact, probably didn't get any. But then she gets a dagger because they were fighting. So gets a dagger and cuts herself. The people pull up, the watchmen pull up, and like, what the fuck happened here? Paris is dead, Romeo's dead, Juliet's dead, Friar Lawrence is prancing around, being suspicious of shit. So, everyone's like, we gotta call the prince. Prince comes over, he's like, what the fuck is this? And then it's like, we gotta call the Montague and Capulet. And they're like, what the fuck is this? In fact, actually, I remember this because I read it last night. Obviously, uh, the Montague was like, "What woes?" So paraphrasing. What? Who calls me this early? I'm already going through stuff, man. Like my wife just died from a broken heart because Romeo was exiled. Not a direct quote. I don't have the direct quote. And then they see Romeo laid dead. It's like, oh my god, what the fuck is this? And then somebody's like, we gotta have somebody recant the story. And Friar Lawrence, uh, being the real one he is, it's like I'll tell you the entire story, and he tells the entire story, basically. So, and then after he tells the story, it's like, it is my fault. If need be, I will sacrifice this old life to make amends for this injustice that has happened here. Something like that. Not actually, but more or less. So that happens, and the prince says, "Those will be punished. Will be punished. Those that will not be punished will be not punished." And then he basically scolds the Capulet and the Montague, saying, "Do you see what hate does? Stop being haters." And then they make up. The Capulet and the Montague's like, "Ah, you're so right. I love you, Montague. I will make a statue of Romeo for." And then the Montague's like, "Oh my God, Capulet, I'm so sorry." I will make a statue of Juliet. Verona will be is named Verona, but it will be known for Juliet, which, to be fair, it is actually because of how good the story is. That's basically more or less how the story ends. Now, allow me to discuss some things. One, Juliet is great. Juliet's my favorite character, easy, easy, and there's a pretty good cast, mind you. There's only probably one character I dislike, and that has been very obviously mentioned. If you couldn't tell, it's fucking Tybalt. Tybalt blows. But someone's got to drive the story, right? Someone's got to be the villain, and I guess I had to be him. Still don't like him though. Everyone else, I don't mind. They're either indifferent, like Paris and the Prince, and like not indifferent, but old Capulet's kind of an ass for trying to force his daughter into a wedding like a day like 2 hours after her cousin died, and Romeo got banished, but he didn't know that. But you got to do what you got to do. I guess I don't agree with it, but it's the sign of the times. Other than that, Montague, he's cool. He's fine. He's also a little indifferent in my eyes. To me, he's a little. He doesn't really give up too much. But everyone else is pretty sick. Romeo, great. Friar Lawrence, great. The nurse, pretty solid, right? Benvolio, but a little good boy. Little good boy. Ah, what else is there, man? I can't even think of anyone else. Shit, not that many characters in the series. I'm sure I'm missing somebody. But top five characters is probably like Juliet's number one. Mercutio maybe number two. If not Mercutio, then it's Friar Lawrence, and then number three would be the other one. But I'm thinking it's Juliet number one, Mercutio number two because he's so fucking funny. Friar Lawrence because he's a real one. Romeo because Romeo, and then the last one's like the nurse because she's funny. Maybe Benvolio. Benvolio's a good boy, but he doesn't have that many lines. He's like, Nurse has lines. It's tough. It's like, what can you do? When you're a good character, you don't have lines. You can't be whatever, right? That's the top five. Now, allow me to rant about Tybalt. Why? Why? If you like Tybalt, right? I must ask why. Because if you were real, again, I would probably not be friends with him. This dude is just belligerent. There's ignorant is one thing, right? But this guy actively seeks out the blood of Montagues, like he's a vampire. And he's like, what are you doing? The hate, the hater. This guy, never mind drinking haterade. He's injecting haterade into his bloodstream. Like, what are you doing? Just let people be, please. This is it just doesn't make sense. Other than that, I mean, I could he's so dumb. And let me say the power scale is a little weird in the series because Tybalt's like supposed to be the guy when it comes to sword fighting, but Romeo just beats him. Maybe because like Romeo's maybe he's just him, but I don't know, man. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. That's fine though. It's fine as long as he dies. As long as he dies, I don't care. I mean, that's it. I said my piece. It's a little vitriolic, I can understand, but at the end of the day, it's just a story. But they could have lived such a happy life if you didn't just ruin everything. Whatever. No, what's the real point of the series is the real point of me talking about this is because I want to talk about how I changed my mind on the story. I used to not like it again, but I I quite enjoyed it. Mostly because of the Romeo and Juliet scenes. Obviously, the story is called Romeo and Juliet. I'd hope that the best part of the story is the relationship between Romeo and Juliet, which again they did really well. Shout outs to Shakespeare. I, I changed my mind. I was a hater. Now I believe. And Romeo and Juliet. If you are a romantic in any way, shape, or form, I give it a read. Let your maybe you're like, but it's Shakespeare. It's so difficult to read. I actually didn't think this read was actually that hard. I could see how some people would think it's very difficult. I certainly did back in the day, right? When I was a little younger, but maybe read a little bit more, and then eventually you'll find yourself finding believing that the Romeo and Juliet's not that hard of a story to read, which and it's certainly worth the effort if you're once you maybe mature, if you're a little young, which you probably shouldn't be watching this anyway. Also, it's 50 minutes in. I don't feel like young people have a lot of attention span, starting with my generation. Um, you probably wouldn't enjoy the story that much because you just don't understand it. Maybe you do, and you just love the story. I'm not gonna speak for all of you, but it's it's a story really it's really it's really beautiful, man. I don't have any other way to put it really. It's just a really pretty story with pretty language, pretty people apparently, allegedly. I as you read it, you don't see pictures of the people. Romeo and Juliet could be not to my liking, but beauty is subjective. In my mind, they're like uber hot, but that's how they're supposed to be, right? And it's even better because their dialogue is great. I don't even care if they're ugly because their dialogue makes them that much more attractive. I like to say something also because a bit ago, when I was first reading the story, I was told of perspective young love versus a little bit more mature love, between the young love being a little bit more immature with Romeo and Juliet, and they see each other and they fall in love just instantly, basically. And this Paris, the love between Paris and Juliet is a little bit more stable. Ha- I I can see where you're coming from, but I think it's a little flawed because Paris doesn't know shit about Juliet. Also, I'm gonna keep it a. I'll be very honest. If I were Romeo and I was showing up in this ball, and I'm like, oh, this is a woman I'd like to talk to, and she replies the way that she does, I'd be in love too, dude. Like the chemistry is insane. Come on, the chemistry between Romeo and Juliet from day one, from minute one, was impeccable, truly impeccable. The chemistry between Paris and Juliet, admittedly, Paris never had a chance, right? But it's just not there. And Romeo doesn't know shit about Paris. No, Romeo doesn't know anything about Juliet, but neither does really Paris. So I don't really like the argument of Romeo and Juliet is very mature love, and Paris and Juliet are like very more very much more mature. It's like, no, not really. I don't agree with that at all. But to each their own. No. With that, after 52 minutes of rambling, uh, I'll let you guys go. Have a nice one. I hope you enjoyed this like half rant of Tybalt and half praise of Romeo and Juliet. Have a good one. Peace.